Hello, React Universe fans. Today, there's no guest, no live demo, no how to upgrade React to React 19 in 5 minutes. Today is a story. I'm your host, Ola Desmus-Slinczewska. I'm a software developer with a passion for cybersecurity. It so happens that I stumbled upon this story, a secure Christmas carol, and I would love to share it with you. It was the night before Christmas, and all through the world, not a creature was coding, except for the ones who had no choice. And the one man who still thought deadlines mattered more than Christmas, Npmezer Scrooge. Real name? Nobody remembered anymore. On GitHub, on the company org, on every package he ever published, it just said Npmezer. He liked it that way, short and clean. His home office was dark, except for the cold blue glow of a 32-inch monitor. Empty energy drink cans stood like tired skyscrapers around the keyboard. In Slack, most avatars had turned gray and festive, little Christmas trees, sleeping moons, back in January statuses. A handful were still glowing green, stuck on yet another late-night push. Npmezer ignored them all. He worked from home, always had, and home had become the place where Christmas never arrived. He didn't do holidays, he did deadlines. He muttered the same thing he always muttered when someone posted a security meme in the general channel. A humbug. He turned his attention back to the terminal and pressed enter. npm install began its familiar dance. 842 packages, 312 of them new. One line flashed red for half a second. Vulnerability found in UA parser JS, high severity. He scrolled past it. Works in my machine, he said, and reached for another can. Suddenly, the room grew colder. The overhead light flickered once, twice, then settled into a sickly pulse. His mechanical keyboard began typing on its own. Slow, deliberate clacks sounded like iron chains being dragged across old, wooden floorboards. Clank, clank, clank. Then, a shape stepped straight through the wall. For one heartbeat, Npmezer thought it was Marta, his programmer friend who vanished after their startup imploded in 2015. Same tired eyes, same faded React Conf hoodie, but the figure was translucent and the glow from the monitor passed right through her. From her wrists hung endless chains made of package versions. Lodash 41620 dragged behind her like an anchor. Express 412.2 clattered against the floor. Every link glowed faint red with unpatched vulnerability alerts. She spoke with the voice of someone who had screamed into the void too many times. Npmezer, these are the chains we forged together. Every time we said just ship it. Every time we typed caret instead of an exact version. Every time we ignored the audit warning because the build was green. She lifted the chains. They stretched out the door, down the hallway, into the night. I wear the dependency hell I helped create. Yours is longer. Much longer. Npmezer tried to laugh it off. Cool AR filter. Did someone spin up a Halloween prank early? Marta's ghost looked sad. 3 spirits are coming tonight. if you still have a heart under all those layers of cynicism, maybe you'll listen. She faded into static, and the last thing he heard was her whisper, "In node modules, no one can hear you scream." A soft green glow rose from the carpet. The ghost of Christmas past looked like the old hexagonal Node.js logo, but younger, kinder, holding a tiny glowing lantern shaped like a terminal cursor. "Come," it said, voice gentle. "Let me show you when things were simple." They flew back through time, lines of code rushing past like snowflakes. 2009. First, they saw devs copying jQuery from random zip files. If the CDN went down, half the internet broke. Young Npmezer laughed at the chaos. 2010. Isaac Schluter releases NPM. On the first day, the registry was almost empty, just a handful of tiny utilities. It felt like the biggest Christmas present the JavaScript world had ever received. Young Npmezer stayed up all night, publishing his first utility. 2013, React drops. 2015, React Native appeared. In the meantime, the registry exploded with gifts, hooks, animations, state libraries. Everyone shared, everyone trusted. Then, the go stopped at March 2020. Microsoft buys NPM. Some people cheered for stability, some worried about the future. Young Npmezer only posted a shrug emoji and went back to coding. The ghost's light dimmed. You were given a gift of trust. You never learned how fragile it is. The ghost's voice lingered in the air, even though Npmezer was now alone. The second spirit filled the entire room. Imagine a 10-foot-tall terminal window standing upright like a Christmas tree. Holly and tiny fairy lights crawled through the scrolling text. Its face was a progress bar that never quite reached 100%. "I am the ghost of Christmas present," it boomed, voice crackling like an old speaker. The scrolling text itself shimmered and rippled like a robe of living code. "Touch the screen," the spirit said. The screen rippled, and suddenly he was everywhere at once. Warsaw, 11:30 p.m. A junior dev knelt by the Christmas tree watching his 6-year-old daughter rip open the last present with shining eyes. She looked up, beaming, holding a new stuffed reindeer. He forced a smile, kissed the top of her head, whispered, "Papa has to fix one tiny thing for work," and carried his laptop to the kitchen table. Behind him, the wrapping paper still crackled with joy, while his terminal filled with red audit warnings. Sao Paulo, midnight. An entire team sat in the office because a popular icon package had been hijacked that afternoon. They passed around cold slices of panettone and typed in silence. California, 1 a.m. Npmezer saw Priya, the one whose every PR carried quiet, polite security notes nobody ever paid attention to. She had slipped away from the living room laughter and the smell of her mom's cinnamon rolls, closed the door of her childhood bedroom, and sat at the tiny old desk under faded Harry Potter posters. The glow of her laptop lit her face blue. On the screen, in giant red letters, "Urgent, production incident. Stored XSS payload executed in 1.4 million user accounts via React Quilt dependency. Attackers are injecting live phishing models right now. Roll back or patch within the next 60 minutes. Her phone kept buzzing, Slack exploding, the CEO pinging, "Where are we on this?" She typed with shaking hands while, through the thin wall, she could hear her little brother shouting with joy over a new Nintendo and her dad calling, "Priya, come down, the candles are lit." She muted her mic, wiped her eyes, and kept typing. The giant terminal's voice was barely above a whisper now. "That's Priya and Npmezer. She warned you about that exact rich text library 6 months ago. You told her, we'll swap it after the holiday push. Now her family thinks she's home for Christmas. She's home, trying to stop strangers from stealing people's bank details because you didn't listen." Npmezer tried to look away, but the screen followed his eyes. Then, without warning, the holly-wrapped fairy lights began to flicker and die one by one. The scrolling text slowed, stuttered, stopped. The progress bar drained from 99% all the way back to 0. The 10-foot terminal collapsed into itself like a dying star, folding into a thin vertical line of green light that winked out with a soft electronic sigh. The third spirit arrived without sound. It was a towering Node modules folder that rose from the floor and kept growing silently, relentlessly, until its jagged top scraped the ceiling. Then the front of the folder split open like a mouth. In the darkness inside, 2 glowing white squares appeared, small, unblinking. The cold, dead eyes of Clippy, the old Microsoft paperclip assistant, but stretched, distorted, and wrong. Below the eyes, a single bent paperclip mouth curved into a smile that never reached the eyes. One thin, bent paperclip arm unfolded, impossibly long, and pointed toward the far wall. The wallpaper dissolved where it pointed, peeling away like dead code. Beyond it opened a cold, empty void. Npmezer felt himself pulled forward. No footsteps, no choice. He was simply there, inside the vision, standing in the ruined future. They stood in a co-working space. Years from now. Broken monitors, dead plants, one string of Christmas lights flickering like a dying heartbeat. 5 people, all teammates, stood around a weak projector. Their faces were gray. On screen, some sort of presentation with a slide with Npmezer's GitHub profile. Archived. 0 stars. Last commit 7 years ago. Someone whispered, "He was the gatekeeper. He let the rot in. Never pinned a version, never run an audit, never once said sorry." Another voice added, "Tonight is the anniversary. Exactly 1 year ago, Christmas Eve 2031, the breach hit. Our app went dark. 14 million users exposed. The company folded before New Year, and Npmezer, he just vanished, left us holding the bag." On screen, the slide changed. Case study, the Npmezer breach, how one senior dev's neglect killed a unicorn. The folder loomed, silent and huge. From the darkness inside, the twisted paperclip arm unfolded again, thin and bent at wrong angles. It stretched across the room, metal glinting faintly, and pointed straight at the far wall. Where it pointed, the wall dissolved into nothing. The ruined future waited beyond, Outside, the front-end world in pieces. Microsoft packages locked behind enterprise walls. Indie teams running tiny private registries on old laptops. No one dared publish anything new. React Native hadn't had a meaningful open-source library in years. Junior devs learned to code in locked sandboxes because the cloud cannot be trusted anymore. Npmezer noticed the cracked monitor in the middle of the room, showing the NPM website. The big Publish Package button, the one that used to be bright green, was now dull gray, dead, untouchable. He stared at it, throat dry. Then, without a sound, the towering black folder began to shrink. The jagged edges folded inward, the twisted clippy arm retracted like a dying spider, and the whole thing collapsed into a single line of pixels that blinked and vanished. The room was empty. Only the cracked monitor remained, its gray button still mocking Npmezer in the silence. Npmezer screamed. He jolted away in his chair, heart slamming against his ribs. He reached out with shaking fingers, half expecting them to pass through everything like smoke. First the desk, solid wood, cold, real. The familiar coffee ring stain he'd never bothered to clean. Then the keyboard, sticky keys from last week's Red Bull spill, a couple of crumbs still trapped under the space bar. Then the monitor bezel, still warm from hours of burning pixels, the faint smell of hot plastic rising. He pressed his whole palm against the screen. He even pinched his own forearm. Real. All of it. Only then did he dare to breathe. The nightmare was over, but the cracked gray publish button still burned behind his eyes. Morning sunlight, actual Christmas morning, was sneaking through the blinds. The terminal still showed last night's npm install, frozen at 97%. His hands shook so hard he could barely type. He killed the process. He opened package.json. For the first time in years, he replaced every caret with exact versions. He ran npm audit, read everywhere. He didn't swear. He just started fixing. Then he opened Slack, and he wrote to his team. Team, take today off. Take the whole week, fully paid. No questions. I've been the guy rolling my eyes at one more audit and overriding warnings because deadlines felt bigger than the risks. I was wrong. Security isn't humbug. It's what lets us build without fear. Merging every pending security PR today, adding snick scans, dependabot for auto updates, and log file checks in CI. We'll test it all together next sprint. Priya, starting with the notes you flagged as a junior, you were right to push back. Thanks for sticking with me. I'm sorry it took this long. Merry Christmas. Go be with the people who make the holidays real. He hit enter, closed the laptop, and for the first time in years walked out of his home office while the sun was still up, the weight lifting just a little. And so, as Tiny Tim would say, if he were a security-conscious React Native developer, God bless us, everyone, and may all your dependencies be pinned. Go hug someone you love, run an audit tonight, log those versions. If you're curious about the vulnerable libraries mentioned in this story, check out the show notes. We'll be back in January with normal episodes. Until then, stay secure, stay kind, and have yourself a very Merry Christmas.